Good morning, everyone. A very good morning to Dr. Indu Arora, the Vice President of the IIC of the college, Dr. Neetu, the convener, our resource person, Dr. Japneet Kaur, faculty members, and my dear students. We have gathered here online for a workshop on lean startup and minimum viable product under the aegis of Institutions Innovation Council, Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell. Mehirchand Mahajan DAV College for Women, Chandigarh, is a landmark institution in women's education in North India. The college has been re-accredited with grade A by NAC. Institutions Innovation Council has been set up under the aegis of Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell to encourage, inspire, and nurture young students by supporting them to work with new ideas and transform them into prototypes. IIC at the rate MCM has received star ranking in 2019-20 and 2021 for its IIC activities. The main objective of IIC is to conduct various innovation and entrepreneurship related activities in collaboration with academicians, entrepreneurs, investors, professionals, and create a mentor pool for student innovators. I would now introduce our resource person for today, Dr. Japneet Kaur. She has done her doctorate in accounting and finance from University Business School, Punjab University. She has published many papers in UGC approved journals, presented papers in national and international conferences, and has even organized many conferences and workshops. She has her expertise in the areas of principles of financial accounting, principles and practices of management, cost accounting, company law, production and operations management, entrepreneurship and small business, and financial markets and services. We are glad to have you amongst us, Dr. Japneet. Now I invite you to take over.
Thank you so much, Chris, ma'am, for such a humble introduction. I'm pleased and overwhelmed for the same. Good morning, my dear students and respected faculty members. I, Dr. Japneet Kaur, is going to discuss or deliberate on the topic lean startup and minimum viable product. So before we delve into the details about the lean startup methodology and minimum viable product, I'm sure many of you must have attended various workshops on startups and venture capitalists and angel investment. So can anybody please just shed a light as to what do you mean by a startup? Yes? Would anybody like to shed some light? What is indeed a startup? Yes, anyone?
When we want to start a new occupation or a new business.
Okay. All right. Yes, good. Anybody else? Yes, good.
Startup can be to commence something new or to start something.
To start something new. Okay, wonderful.
Dr. Japneet, I would just like to interrupt. I can feel the students have a lot of enthusiasm. I would just request everyone to switch on their cameras so we can have a picture together and then we can carry on. I request everyone to please switch on your cameras so that we can have a nice picture. Are we done, Sonali ma'am? Thank you. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Principal ma'am. She could not spare time because of her busy schedule. And I really thank ma'am for the opportunity that she gave us for having this expert talk. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, Dr. Japneet, you can
Okay,
please continue.
sure. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, Nidhi, you just raised your hand. You would like to say something? All right. Okay. So I have my own students, the ones who have just recently graduated, or maybe they are on the verge of graduating. They have their own startups, and it's not that they became successful overnight. It was a long journey. They failed many a times in the respective ventures they had started with. They learned from the experiences, and now presently, like some of them are the CEO, or some of them are heading the branches. So yes, so this is, you learn from your experiences. So in literal terms, if I talk of a startup, it is any new business, any business which has been newly formed, with a particular momentum behind it. You have a perceived demand about your product or service. And yes, where does a startup emanate from? You need to have an intention as to the gaps which may be arising in the market. What market gaps are prevalent in the market? So if I as a teacher, or you as a student, have to think in terms of starting a new business, okay, so how at all you're going to start it? What are the few steps do you think are required to start a new business? Yes, can anybody tell me what is the first thing that we look forward to if you have to start a new business?
The first thing is the demand of the product, like this thing is demanded and by which customer it is demanded.
Okay, wonderful. Rather, I think maybe I was mistaken. You are a newbie, so you know better. Certainly, this should have been the first step whenever you are thinking of a new business. But if we think in terms of traditional, mindset or traditional ideology, what do you think would have been the first step in order to start a new business, and perhaps because of which many businesses failed? What is the
Proper
first?
planning.
Yes.
Proper planning.
Proper planning. Okay, first of all, you have plan. Absolutely. Whenever you have to start a new business, your main emphasis, I don't say whether it's correct or not, certainly yes, because starting a new business requires a lot of planning, so it has to be there. So don't you think so? Thinking a business idea is the first thing that comes to your mind. You need to have a business idea to
Yes,
culminate
ma'am.
into, yes, a product.
Yes.
Yes. So this is a we talking of a business idea which we feel perhaps would fulfill the needs of the customers. Okay, what comes next? What do you think should be the next step to go ahead with?
Funding.
Funding. Okay, wonderful. Before that, before we move on to funding, we need to have a business plan. Okay, so can anybody tell me what do you mean by a business plan? Yes, what is a business plan?
Mom, we need to judge the competitors around and we need to create the entire performer of how we're going to take over the business.
Absolutely. So it is, you can say it's kind of a written formal document in which we try to gauge the market, we try to gauge the customers, what are going to be our funding requirements, how to tap them. So this is, and how, when and how to launch the product in the market. All right. So then comes, as one of you rightly pointed out, get the funding. So where do you get the funding from? From your angel investors, venture capitalists who are ready to fund the startups. And finally, your business is set to launch. All right, you have a business, you've done everything. So basically, what was your emphasis at? You emphasized entirely on planning, planning, and planning. This is what we've been talking of. Apart from business idea, when we are talking of business plan, it required a detailed planning. It had to be charted down. It had to be written down formally. Finally, for getting the funding also, you need to prepare documents. You need to look for the right sources of funding options, and finally launch the business. However, if I talk of the same process in the present scenario, do you agree that these indeed should be the steps which should be followed? I have a business idea. I feel that yes, the customers are going to like it. I create a business plan, I chart down, I write everything on paper, I look for the funding options, and finally I launch the business. Ironically, do you think these should be the steps which should be followed by a person who's going to start a new business? Yes? Well, I have a different view on it. If you talk of this as some of the steps to look forward to starting a new business, this is perhaps a traditional methodology to go for. Why do you think it is something which need not be followed? Where did we go wrong? What went wrong? Everything was planned, everything was charted down, the business idea was excellent, we launched the product phenomenally. So where did the numbers go wrong?
Mom,
Why?
we didn't judge the market.
Absolutely wonderful. Yes. Whatever I felt as a person, as an entrepreneur, I went ahead and charted down everything in terms of a business idea, in terms of a business plan, and finally launched the product. But did I gauge the market? Did I gauge the customer interests? Okay, even if I did that for some, maybe because I was too busy in planning, even if I gauge the consumer interest, by the time the product gets launched in the market, usually whenever a product is launched, it is launched in its full form. We don't launch it as a prototype, however we launch it in its full swing, full form. So what if by the time you think this process is too easy to accomplish, to achieve, you make a business plan, you thinking everything happens overnight, or it may take months or years to culminate into a business product? It's a long journey, yes.
Yes, ma'am. It will take time.
Yes, it may take time in terms of months or years. And by the time you launch your product in the market, maybe you have a strong competitor who has a better product to offer, and that too at a lower price. So your entire activity is futile because your product is no more in demand. Customers do not want it. Even if they want it, there is already a competitor who's offering the same product at a lesser price. So all efforts in vain. So the activity becomes redundant. So what do we do? What do we have? So here comes the solution. So what is the solution? It is our lean startup. Okay, lean startup. So what basically lean startup mean? What does it mean? Who propounded it? Where did it start from? Okay. It was founded by Eric Ries. So he was an American. He started with the concept of lean startup. So as the name suggests, it is indeed a startup, but it has been introduced in a lean form. So what is basically a lean startup? Now, this strategy can tell you if your business model is practical and it helps with developing products or services. How do you know whether your business model is practical? You have been planning. You have been charting down your requirements, your costs, your customers, sorry, your target customers, your suppliers. However, you never worked on it whether your model is practical or not. So how did it help? So how does this lean startup help you? So, what is lean startup? So, a lean startup is a method used to found a new company or introduce a new product on behalf of an existing company. So, there is already a company existing in the market, so it wants to introduce a new product, or it could be a new company altogether. Now, this startup strategy looks at business development as an experiment. So where does the difference lie? We've been talking about startup. So where did it start from? Yes. What is the first step which you pointed out? What was the first step? Planning. Absolutely. So it's not that lean startup does not require planning. It does require planning, but it lays more emphasis on your product as an experiment. Okay, I have I think commerce and economics students with me, if I'm not wrong, right? Yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It's okay,
Yes,
doesn't
ma'am.
matter. All of us know what is an experiment. Chalo, let's think in terms of science students. What do they do in a lab? How do they experiment? We've seen in movies, we've seen it otherwise. So what is an experiment? How do they go about it? They
Hit
mix
and
it,
trial.
hit and trial. Okay, they mix one solution X with Y, and they assume that X plus Y will make out Z. Does that Z always come out of X and Y? Just assuming, because I'm also not a science student. Yes, so if you're mixing X with Y, assuming that Y, Z is going to be the outcome, is Z always the outcome? Certainly not. So here comes the key. Now, how is this an experiment? Now, it focuses on testing and actively working with potential customers to help you create a product or service they need. So, what are you doing? Rather than imposing your idea on the customers, you are gauging customers' requirement, customers' need. So, your end starting and end point has altogether changed from traditional method to that of lean startup. So what is the starting point here? You have to identify the problem. Where are you identifying the problem from? From the customer's needs. Maybe there are already existing products in the market. So you would gauge them, you would observe them, you would ask them in terms of what other services, what other features they are looking forward to. So that the starting point is the requirement or the problem identification from the customer's end, and not imposing your business idea into the onto the customers. I hope I've made myself clear as of now.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So how does it help? It helps us to save time and money, and we are certainly put in a better position for success. All right. So now, basically, the lean startup method advocates developing products that consumers have already demonstrated they desire, so that a market will already exist as soon as the product is launched. So previously in the traditional method, what did we discuss? Yes, in the traditional method, we had talked about our business plan, and from business plan we ended up launching the product. However, if we are talking of lean startup, what are we talking of? We are advocating, or we are developing products that have already been demonstrated to the customers. We know what are their desires. We already have an existing market there before the product is launched. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि by the time हमारा product market में launch होगा, it is no more on demand, or we already have a competitor. So on the other hand, if we talk of traditional method, we are developing a product and then hoping कि नहीं, जैसे हम product launch करेंगे, we have a ready-made demand for it. All right, so this is not the case in case of lean startup. So we will delve into more details, and I'm sure it will get clearer as we progress further. So what are the requirements for lean startup? Now it considers experimentation. As I explicitly mentioned, that it's not that we don't plan. We cannot come up with any kind of startup or any kind of venture unless and until we plan. However, what are we emphasizing on? Experimentation. So what does experimentation mean? ये चलेगा भी कि नहीं? हम assume कर रहे हैं that this is the idea that we have. So we are going to test it. We are going to come in contact with the consumers, with the potential customers. So we're going to experiment कि जो हम product सोच रहे हैं वाकई में market में चलेगा भी कि नहीं. So instead of business plans, which was the second step that we had discussed in the first slide, lean startups use a business model. Can anybody tell me what is a business model? And how do they differ? So in case of business plan, it was a formal written document. It contained the goals of the business, the methods of achieving those goals, and the time frame. So this was business plan. हमने एक document बना लिया जिसमें हमने business के goals chart down कर लिए, उसके methods, and finally what are we expecting? How long will it take? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So this was about business planning. So if I talk of business model, what is a business model and how does it differ from a business plan? Yes, any idea? Just make a guess.
Business models are basically B2B, B2C kind of things.
Okay, B2B, B2C. Yes, good. Anybody else? All right. So whenever company has a core profit making plan है कि this is the basis on which we are going to be profited or gain profit. Now, what does it define? It defines the product or services it will sell. So you have a core profit making plan. It is going to tell us the product and services it is going to offer or it is going to sell, what is going to be its target market, what is going to be its expected cost. But how does it all, wind up? So lean startups use a business model based on hypothesis. I'm sure many of you must have done research or must have read research methodology as one of these subjects. So hypotheses we all know are testable assumptions or testable proposition. What does it do? It defines a relationship between two variables. Yes, am I right? Any idea what are hypotheses?
Yes, ma'am. These are also known as assumptions, and you are right at the point.
Absolutely. So these are testable. अच्छा मैं simple example लेती हूँ. So if I'm telling you, it defines the relationship between two variables. Okay, so your exams are round the corner. So maybe we can say I form an alternate hypothesis. The students who have anxiety before the exam are likely to score higher marks than the ones who do not have much anxiety. Yes? So is it true? Is it always so? Yes or no? The students who have anxiety before the exam, you have butterflies, you have goosebumps before appearing for the exam. So it is assumed. So I'm testing. I want to test that is it the ones who are more anxious are likely to score more marks? Certainly, it may or may not be true. So what are hypotheses? This is the tentative statement which I want to test. कि ऐसा है कि नहीं है. Again, it will vary from sample to sample. What sample size am I taking? Am I taking school children or I'm taking college students or whatever? So just an example that I've told you that there needs to be some variables and it needs to be tested in the market. So this is how lean startup work. Then it needs to have data. Okay. So data does not need to be completed before proceeding. It just needs to be sufficient. So it just means that it's not that you cannot have complete data. अब data हमें किस चीज के लिए चाहिए? About our potential customers. So even if we have good enough data, we can proceed with the startup. All right. So then entrepreneurs following this method test their hypothesis by engaging with potential customers, purchasers, and partners to gauge their reactions about product features, pricing, distribution, and customer acquisition. So what are these entrepreneurs doing? They are testing. Just suppose many assumption ली about the students. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe visit certain schools and just see the students who are more anxious, did they end up scoring more marks or not? So I've personally observed it. It is based on my personal observation. I have engaged with them, I have done interviews with them, and I've personally experienced. So likewise, entrepreneurs also do the same tasks with the potential customers, purchasers, and partners. So basically everyone in the supply chain. Now, this testing phase might result in changing the target customer. So that means, suppose if I was targeting for my product, I was targeting school children. Based on the responses, I feel, nahi yaar, this is not appropriate for this genre or maybe for this category of customers. Maybe I should switch to adolescents or maybe I should switch to teenagers, depending on what responses I'm getting. Or maybe I modify the product or altogether I pivot, I change, I shift my plan altogether maybe, or I have to do away the product because it does not have any attractiveness or it is not accepted by the customers at all. So as we discussed earlier, what is the first step with which a lean startup starts with? It has to identify a problem. Okay, initially traditional method, where did it start from? You have a business idea, you do all the homework, you do immense planning, and you launch the product. However, if we talk of lean startup, it has to identify a problem. It has to address the needs of the customers and then do a follow-up. So for this, it needs a minimum viable product, which is one of the ancillary topics which we are going to discuss. It is indeed a part of lean startup only. So we are going to discuss this term in detail. What is a minimum viable product? It is also the smallest form of the product that allows entrepreneurs to introduce it to potential customers for feedback. So minimum viable product is not the complete product. whatever we are offering, maybe we are introducing a game or we are introducing an app, तो उसमें मैं क्या करूंगी, मैं सिर्फ एक या दो फीचर्स के साथ इंट्रोड्यूस करूंगी. But we cannot say it's a prototype. It is even lesser than a prototype. It is the simple basic form which can be introduced by the entrepreneurs. Okay. So this method is faster and less expensive than developing the final product. Definitely, because we are just introducing a form. हम इसकी basic version introduce कर रहे हैं, उसको test कर रहे हैं. उससे क्या होगा? Our risk is going to be reduced to a considerable extent. Okay. So now we have requirements for lean startup. So if we are talking of lean startup, there are the three principles by which it sways. So the three steps are, first of all, build, then we have measure, and then finally learn. So this is the foundation, or you can say these are the building blocks of a lean startup methodology. So we shall discuss them one by one. So first of all, starting with build. Okay. So if I talk of build, again, if I talk in terms of traditional method, I say the first question that will come to my mind is, क्या हम इसको बना सकते हैं? Is it practically feasible? Yes, we will see. Suppose we are introducing an app, we are introducing a car, we are introducing a remote or a game, whatever. So the first question that perhaps would come to our mind would be, क्या ये बन सकता है? Yes, am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, yes. However, if we talk or if we think from a lean startup, from the perspective of a lean startup, this should not be the first question which needs to be addressed. The questions that need to be addressed should be, should this product be built? Should or can में क्या difference हुआ? Can is that how feasible. Practically, can it be brought to the market? However, this is not the question which needs to be addressed. The questions which need to be addressed should be, should this product be built? क्या ये product build करना चाहिए? Customers को ज़रूरत है? या already हमारे पास इतना competition है, या इसको इतना time लग जाएगा बनने में कि by the time it is being introduced, the demand will vanish from the market. So rather than working on can, it should be should. And secondly, can we build a sustainable business around this set of products and services? Certainly, if you are introducing a product, you are thinking from the customer's perspective, you would also see कि ठीक है product तो आ गया, क्या हम business में sustain भी कर सकेंगे अगर हम ये products और services market में ला रहे हैं? So what is the question under build? Minimum viable product. So the first step amongst the three steps, the first step covers build. In case of lean startup methodology, and the first point covers minimum viable product. So I just told you what is a minimum viable product. Can anybody tell me? Yes, what is a minimum viable product? Okay, I'll explain it again. So whenever we are thinking of lean startup approach, we have to think in terms of a loop. Loop matlab build, learn, build, measure, learn, again, build, measure, learn. So the step does not end at learn. It keeps revolving. So if you're trying to start a business, you should have an idea of what market need your product or service tries to address. So as I told you, we need to address the needs of the market, of the customers. So again, I told you that the question should not be can this be built, rather should this be built. So now the question lies here is minimum viable product. So think of it as a research project for your business. आप सोचो, suppose आप कल को interviews के लिए जा रहे हो, you do some homework, you are going for any kind of research, maybe PhD or anything. So you make a research project in your mind in terms of the basic minimum form. So basically, MVP is not a ready-to-ship product. If it is not even a prototype, it is supposed to be minimal and shouldn't take a lot of time to make. Okay. So what usually happen is the product may change dramatically. हम उसको abandon कर सकते हैं. Where will we get this information from? From the feedback जो users से हमें मिल रही हैं. So whatever we had thought of, it might as well altogether diverge from our original project. So the team certainly will not waste time if they feel that whatever they've offered is not interesting or it is not attractive. All right. So let us discuss what is an MVP. All right, students, a link has been shared in the chat box. So all of you are supposed to fill the attendance. Okay. So MVP. Now, minimum viable product is the most basic version of the product which the company wants to launch in the market. ठीक है, अब आपकी company है, as I told you, it's not even a prototype. It is the most basic version of the product. It could be a car, it could be a website, an app, a TV, or a laptop. So what happens when you are introducing a basic version to the consumers? You are able to gauge the response from the prospective consumers or buyers. And what happens when by the time you reach the final product, it is much in shape, much better in shape. So because you've done a lot of research, you will get to know where your product is lacking, what are its strengths, what are its weaknesses. So basically it's a development technique in which a new product is introduced in the market with basic features. With basic features, I would like to emphasize the bare minimum features. Even one feature would suffice, but it has to be bare minimum. But at the same time, it should be enough to get the attention of the consumers. So the final product is released in the market only after getting sufficient feedback from the product's initial users. As I told you, it works on the core of feedback. So it is very important, as I told you, if we talk of minimum viable product, a feedback loop has to be there. जब तक हमें कस्टमर से फीडबैक नहीं मिलेगी, we will not be able to switch from our basic minimum product to that of the final product. So what are the distinctive features that a minimum viable product needs to have? So first is enough features for consumers to purchase the product. As I told you, it needs to have bare minimum features, but at the same time, इतने होने चाहिए ताकि हम customers का interest attract कर सकें और gauge कर सकें. Then very, very, very important, or maybe paramount importance is your feedback mechanism. So this is from where we will get information from our prospective customers or early adopters as to where are we lacking, should we go ahead with the product, should we change the target audience, should we modify the product, or should we abandon it altogether. And again, it's not only about present features, there should also be an announcement or indication of the future benefits which are likely going to be offered by the same app or service or product, whatever we are offering. Okay. So one of the very important examples that I'm going to discuss with you here is, first of all, does anybody have an idea? There are some very famous certain very famous applications which have used MVP to introduce themselves in the market. Can anybody tell me?
Ma'am, is it Twitter?
Is it?
Twitter.
Yes, wonderful. It is. Twitter is certainly one of them. Any other?
Facebook.
So I think you seem to have seen the slide. Okay, good. So we have Facebook, we have Dropbox, we have Twitter, and then what is this? Can anybody tell me what does this sign, logo signify? Yes? Okay, this is Airbnb. So I hope you must have heard of this term, Airbnb.
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
It's a hotel chain.
Yes, not specifically
Not
hotel.
not a chain, but like they take over hotels and they give it.
Yes. So it could be maybe a house. It not only hotel, it could be a house. We could offer it. We need to register ourselves on Airbnb and we can offer it. So it is not basically monthly. So maybe for one day it needs to be completely furnished. They offer a price. We offer a price, and maybe it could be offered for a day or a 2 or 1 week or fortnight, whatever. Okay. So one of the very interesting examples, and you know what is a Dropbox? Yes, Dropbox. What is it? Okay, it is rather one of the best known examples of a business that has grown using a lean startup. It's a file transfer service. Okay, it has over 500 million users worldwide, and it also started with MVP. Okay, now let's discuss about Facebook, and which I'm sure you're going to, it is going certainly going to attract your attention. Okay, we all know Facebook. I don't think so. I have any student to whom I need to introduce the term Facebook. Yes. Yes, all of us. Is there any students perhaps who doesn't use Facebook or who has not used Facebook?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I am assuming that all of you certainly have availed this service. So we all know it's a social media website.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it was launched somewhere around 2006 in India, but it has a long dated history. So we all know the founder is Mark Zuckerberg. He was the one who launched it. Okay, so how did it start? What is the role of MVP here? Now, just or years before Facebook, there was Face Mash. Yes, it was Face Mash and not Facebook. So it was a website created by Mark Zuckerberg with some of his classmates. So I'm sure you must be knowing he's a Harvard University pass out. So he, along with two or three of his friends, started with this concept. They had a business idea, they had this idea, and they started with Face Mash. So what did they do? The concept of the website was very simple. It was a website basically. Okay, so what did this do? They basically aimed at, whosoever is using it would be shown two pictures of the students side by side. Okay, two pictures, so they have to choose which student was hot and which was not. Just imagine, he was so naughty at that time. So this was the first, this is history actually, it's not something which I'm making from my own terms. So this is how he started. So how could it be possible? No, it was $1 billion idea, but where did he go wrong? In order to make it implement, he stole pictures of students from the university's Facebooks. The books that were displayed, that displayed the students, the pictures of every new student. Usme kya hua? Unsurprisingly, the website was shut down by the Harvard executives as soon as they came to know, because of breach of security, privacy, and so on. And finally, the website, I'm talking of Face Mash, was sold. All right. So do you think that was it? That was it? Mark Zuckerberg, yes, his time was over? Certainly not. So thereafter, he again created the application as a universal directory, as I told you, at Harvard. So for the students of Harvard University only. So उसके बाद क्या हुआ, उसने Facebook इंट्रोड्यूस किया. उन्होंने कहा कि the membership was restricted to Harvard students. Only Harvard students could join the social media. So, but it became so popular that it had to open its membership to other universities also, like Stanford, Columbia, and Yale. Now, by the time it was January 2004, then perhaps it was back then that it became so apparent, it became so popular that it was known by the Facebook and not Facebook. Okay, initially then it was launched as the Facebook. However, it lacked a number of services which are included today. So yes, how did it introduce it as the bare minimum? So you can say maybe it just opened its services to everyone with a valid email ID, लेकिन आपकी age should be 13 years and above. So this is how officially Facebook started in 2004, and in India it was launched in 2006. And then it started with tagging. You could tag a picture if you've gone with one of your friends. We have this feature today also. But initially it started with tagging as one of its feature. As I told you, MVP is the bare minimum feature, attractive enough to be able to gauge the interest of the customers. So what do you think are the keys to the success, the MVP success model of Facebook? What went to its success? What made it so successful today? Despite its fallout, despite it being sold when it introduced itself as Face Mash, thereafter again it started with the Facebook at Harvard University, but again it had to look look, it had to see that it is not overriding any of the security issues. So what made it so successful? Yes, what does an MVP require?
Ma'am, the problem that the people were facing and then correcting that problem.
Okay, so initially when it started with Face Mash, the idea was no doubt a $1 billion idea. It's just that its implementation was not genuine because it overrided some of the breach issues. लेकिन Zuckerberg को तभी पता चल गया था कि it is indeed a $1 billion idea. So when it started or introduced the Facebook, it started with the basic model. उसमें सिर्फ basic functionalities थी. As I told you, tagging was one of them. Okay, so there are many functionalities which we can avail. Maybe now we can add pictures, we can add stories. These things were not added initially when it introduced the product. Then again, it was released to a small group of early adopters. कौन से early adopters थे हमारे? Harvard University के students. वो इतनी ज़्यादा hype हो गई, it became so popular. So now the testing was done. Yes, it tested the hypothesis with what sample? With the students of Harvard University, and it became so popular that it had to open its membership to other universities as well. So now testing has been done and it has gained feedback also. Feedback क्या मिली कि लोगों को इतना पसंद आया that it had to open its membership to other universities, and finally at international level somewhere around 2006 in India also we got this. Yes, so this is one of the very apparent examples. Whenever you think of lean startup, and within lean startup, if you think of MVP, yes, Facebook is the predominant example that I can quote here. Okay. Now, if we talk of the next example, so these are some of the examples that I just discussed with you. So we have Facebook, Airbnb, Dropbox, and Twitter. Okay, now the next step, the first step that we discussed was, as I told you, it has 3 building blocks. I'll just go back to that slide. It has 3 building blocks. The first being build, the second is measure, and the third is learn. So I hope I've made myself clear with regards to build. How do you build a startup methodology? Through MVP, which is minimum viable product. Okay, so next we have is measure. Okay, so measure. Now that we have built, now we have a basic minimum product to offer in the market, attractive enough and also offering enough future benefits. Now we are going to measure it. So how are we going to measure it? We're going to test it with different market segments, because we are not sure. As I told you, the hypothesis that I had talked of, if I'm targeting school children, maybe I test the same hypothesis with adolescents or with teenagers or with college goers or with graduates. So I will test the same hypothesis against different market segments. And again, as I told you, feedback is the most important mechanism on which lean startup methodology vouches. So yes, if you find there's not enough interest in your MVP, it can be a sign that it's not viable and you will have trouble building a sustainable business. आपको पहले ही indication मिल गई. You've got a signal that people are not interested. It is not something which is going to help you build your business. So it is something which is not viable. It's viable not in terms of its building, but in terms of its acceptability in the market. So you might as well have trouble building a sustainable business. Okay. So what do you basically do? You once you have your MVP, so before you even created your MVP, you probably had a theory on which customer needs your product or service addresses. Now you can use the data from MVP. जो भी आपने basic product introduce किया, आपने लोगों से पूछा, आपने उनको observe किया, उससे आपको data मिल गया. Now you will compare that data. What is measuring? Whatever data you have, you compare it to your initial idea. Now you can use your customer comments, experiences to make changes. As I told you, changes in terms of the market segment, the product, the features, the technology. So, and again, finally, if you find there's not enough interest, there's a sign that you should not go ahead with this product at all. So then next we have is learn. This is the third step of lean startup methodology. It's where you will choose whether to bring your business idea to life or pivot to a new approach. So now आपने MVP इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया मार्केट में, आपको फीडबैक मिल गई, आपने मेजर कर लिया कि लोगों के क्या कमेंट्स है, लोगों की क्या फीडबैक है, vis-a-vis what was your original idea or original product. Now you will decide, you will choose, you will learn from your experiences as to whether to actually culminate or implement your business idea, or to shift it altogether to a new approach, or to change the market segment, or to change. So that means this is the decision making stage, herein where you make decisions as to whether you should go ahead with it or not. So it's the time that you decide how you move forward with your business data. Is there enough interest in your idea that makes sense to create a business? Or do you have to change your idea and repeat the loop? So again, repeating the loop means going to the first step, which is build. Now this is, as I told you, the third stage. So you are basically choosing whether to go ahead or not to go ahead or shift. So as you continue through the build, measure, learn loop. So who proposed this loop? It was Eric Ries, the founder of Lean Startup methodology. He recommended this as a method of measuring progress. So how do you measure it? You can use customer feedback to measure how close your updates and changes are to meeting customer needs. So this is the process. It is known as validated learning. So if we think of an example of a lean startup, for example, a healthy meal delivery service that is targeting busy single 20 somethings in urban areas might learn that it has a better market in 30 something affluent mothers of newborns in the suburbs. So that means your target audience has altogether changed. Okay, so earlier you were targeting singles, or they were in their early 20s, but now you feel that it is more appropriate for 30 somethings, but then they need to be from the affluent families. So the company might then change its delivery schedule and the types of foods it serves to provide optimal nutrition for new mothers. It might also add on options for meals for spouses or partners and other children in the household. So this is, you learn. आपको लग रहा है कि पहले तो मैं टारगेट ऑडियंस अपनी मार्केट चेंज कर दूं, एंड ऑफ कोर्स इफ यू आर चेंजिंग द मार्केट यू माइट एज वेल हैव टू ऑल्टर द प्रोडक्ट आल्सो टू अ कंसीडरेबल एक्सटेंट. Yes, so have I made myself clear as of now? Yes? Okay. So how does lean startup methodology help entrepreneurs? As I told you, rather I've been emphasizing, these are again propounded by Eric, that think of startups as experiments and not a business plan. So I also initially emphasized that yes, planning is required, but you should consider your startup as an experiment. If initially only you have such high hopes, one should be positive, no doubt about it, but it's not that you are shedding so much of money, it doesn't come very handy. It's such a long process. You end up spending so much of CRs and lakhs on a project, and what if it completely fails in the market? So rather you should consider it as an experiment and also introduce it in the form of a MVP. Now, by creating a simple version of your business and testing it with customers, you will quickly find out if it's really a good idea. Yes, simple version would mean the minimum viable product, the basic form which you can offer to the customers. You test it with the customers, you look forward to their feedback, and finally you are able to make a decision whether at all it's a wonderful idea to go ahead with. You need to change the target audience, you need to change the product features, it's not attractive enough, you need to change the product altogether, or you might as well have to abandon it. The lean startup method can prevent wasted time and help reduce your risks when starting your business. So can anybody tell me how does it help in saving time and reducing risks? Yes, can anybody please tell me how does it help in saving time? What does it do that our time is saved to a considerable level?
Ma'am, maybe the problem is already known so that we can focus on that instead of planning and the
Yes,
problem
yes,
timing thing.
wonderful. Because it starts with identifying the problem only. You identify the problem in the first place, then you move ahead. So just because I would say that other businesses have had success, with following a traditional startup, which we discussed in this one first or second slide, it doesn't mean you will also be successful. So rather, it's a lean startup methodology. It is the way for you to use a feedback loop to test your business idea. Which loop did we discuss about? The build, measure, learn loop. So it is a way for you to see if there's a customer interest in your idea, and if there is not, you can use the data from your test to help you pivot and change your business plan altogether. Okay. So just a few takeaways from whatever we've discussed so far. So lean startup is the process of developing a product or company based on the expressed desires of the market. So as I told you, it starts from the desires, the needs, the problem identification from the market. It uses validated learning, which is a process by which companies assess consumer interest. So you confirm, you see that whether how well are you going to survive in the market, whether at all it is something which is viable, it is feasible, you should go ahead, or it is gauging customer interest or not. So these methods focus heavily on customer related information such as customer churn rate, lifetime customer value, and product popularity. So how frequently you feel that customers are going to switch, what is the lifetime, what is the customer retention value. So it is primarily focusing on these rather than the financials. So in lean startup practices, experimentation is favored, as I've been emphasizing that it's not that it does not, adhere to a rigid plan. It does, but more emphasis is on experimentation than deliberating your time and efforts on a rigid plan, which you're not ready to, flex. Lean startup standards will involve the release of a small firm, as we discuss MVP, which is minimal viable product, or early concept products in order to assess the customer reaction to the product. So just because other businesses may have had success with following a traditional startup growth strategy, it doesn't mean you will also be successful. The lean startup methodology is a way for you to use a feedback loop to test your business idea. The build, measure, learn loop is a way for you to see if there's customer interest in your idea. And if there's not, you can use the data from your test to help you pivot and change your business plan, or maybe you can change the market segments, you can change the product features, you can variate the level at which you are, the services that you're ready to offer. So all this can be changed or shifted altogether.
Hello, ma'am. So,
Yes, who's this? All right, students. So with this, I conclude, and I've given you a quick summary also. So any questions, please go ahead and ask. Does anybody have any questions? Please go ahead and ask.
May I ask?
Yes, please go ahead.
Ma'am, don't traditional startups also use feedback to reform their product and bring any necessary changes? Or is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But despite this flaw, they have been successful. So we can't say that it is because it was something which they looked forward to long time back. So in the present scenario, it is what do we say? What do your marketing teachers teach you? What is the economics of any subject? It is the customer. Everything revolves around him, right? Everything revolves around him. So it's not that we are imposing our idea, it should be rather customer's idea which we have to inculcate and culminate into a project or a business idea.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And ma'am, one more thing: is MVP an advanced version of a prototype, or is it something entirely
No, no,
different?
no, no, no. I specifically mentioned it's not even a prototype. Prototype is still a look-alike of the main product. It offers the basic minimum. Suppose if you wish to offer 10 features in an app, you will just come up with one or maybe two. As I told you, it should be enough to gauge the interest of the customers. It's not even a prototype, even a smaller version of a prototype.
Thank you.
All right. Yes. Anyone else? Anybody would like to share her experiences, or you've started? I'm sure many of my students, I don't know whether they've joined or not, that yes, indeed they have, they have their own startups. They have, one of them is a CEO of one of these startups. And we've had their sessions also lately. So yes, has any one of you come across any such friend of yours in other colleges or otherwise in your families who's quite young enough and who's learned from her experiences, his or her experiences? Would you like to share? All right, students. So yes, I would like to end the session here only. It was wonderful interacting with you, students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Japneet, for providing us with such a knowledgeable lecture on lean startups. I'm sure students must have gained a lot from today's webinar. I now request Dr. Indu Arora, Vice President, Institutions Innovation Council, to please propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Abadeep. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Dr. Nisha Bhargava, Principal and President of IIC 4.0, Dr. Japneet Kaur, our valued resource person for today, faculty and students, I feel honored and privileged to get an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks for this webinar on lean startup and minimum viable product or business. I, on the behalf of IIC, convey deep regards and hearty thanks to our Honorable Resource Person, Dr. Japneet, for sharing her views on this topic. And we are immensely benefited by the knowledge shared by you. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. And your case studies and examples made it more interesting and knowledgeable. Now I take the opportunity to thank Madam Principal for providing her worthy guidance and consistent support. I also express my special thanks to organizing team, Dr. Amandeep, Madam Chris, Ms. Sonali, for hosting this webinar very meticulously. I'm grateful to all teachers and student members for attending this session. With your participation, this event has culminated into a successful event. I thank one and all for their support. Thank you, everyone. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Dr.
much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable feedback. Rather, I feel overwhelmed to have been given this opportunity to be here in front of such worthy coordinators, Indu ma'am, and yes, I'm immensely thankful to Principal ma'am also for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much,
Thank you, everyone.
and thank you, students, for being such a active participation.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really a very helpful session and it
Thank
will
you.
help us a lot. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, girls. Before you leave, please don't forget to mark your attendance. The link is provided in the chat box. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Very good, Japneet. Thank you. You saved us. You are our savior today. Good job. Good job. अरे बहुत अच्छा किया याद रखो हमें याद रखना हम कहीं कहीं आपको कुछ पूछेगा ना कि आपने ये Okay.